during the opening of the plenary session on the Ethnan Summit 2023 in Doha, Qatar, which seeks to address the global challenges, food security, especially in hot countries. My colleague Salifuchen Okama has more.
The 2023 Ethna Summit, with the theme Building New Sustainability Pathways for Hot and Arid Environments, seeks to address the global challenges of food security, responding to a question on the impact of climate change on agriculture in Sierra Leone. President Bio emphasized that countries must endeavor to strike a balance between sustainable agriculture that supports the environment and one that is able to produce enough food, especially with the current Russia-Ukraine crisis, which has adversely affected the globe.
To stimulate economic growth, agriculture can be the motherboard. And this is what we need to do, to catch up with the rest. And we can now introduce the transformation, take it to the next level, agri-processing, and also add value before we sell it to the world and in our own economies. So the indigenous methods, I think, have a place. And most people can afford to pay or prefer to go for what we call organic food. And organic foods are basically products of indigenous methods of production. Climate change has a direct impact on food production. Quite a lot is taking place in terms of erratic weather patterns that affect the agriculture sector. In the past couple of years, we've had a lot of flooding lately, and that is impacting how we can quickly produce enough food for our people.
President Bio maintained that effective mechanized and mass food production are crucial for a stable economic growth and youth employment, but must be mindful of how the process affects the environment and indigenous methods of food production, paramount to nutritional value.
But in the bid to produce for the whole world, we have either forgotten or neglected or completely used technologies and methods that destroy these indigenous methods. We have most of the conditions necessary to embark on food security in our country, but we need certain infrastructure. We need certain support systems. Africa can boast of about 65% of remaining arable land in the world, but we still cannot. We are still net importers of some of the staple foods for different countries. So how do we change that narrative? I believe that with certain policies, with available resources, which is extremely difficult, we know capital is there around the world, but we cannot access it. And when we want to access it, it is rather very expensive for us.
However, Sierra Leone's head of state pointed out that addressing the problems of climate change is expensive, especially for low-income or developing countries like Sierra Leone. Salifucher Nakamara, AYV News.
Salifucher Nakamara there with that story, and President Bio speaking on agriculture. When out the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, the Right Honorable James Cleverly, arrived in Sierra Leone yesterday and went straight to Bo, the hometown of his mother, where he was crowned as Honorary Paramount Chief. Let's take some highlights from the live coverage earlier yesterday in Bo by George Philip Jambawai.
But this is the most amazing welcome. It's really made me feel properly as if I've come home. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's actually a son of the soil come back, and as we would expect, the Paramount Chiefs have given the most fantastic welcome. Plenty thank you to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
You're always welcome for further visits.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much. You have to excuse me. I want to say a big hello and a thank you to the medical team here as well.
And you see them there, and also he has been giving an honorary position. They call him PC Kono Bombo, and he has been given that honorary DS. And now And then he said thank you, and in the Creole thank you, and I think he got that right. And then as he's moving now, he said he wants to thank the medical practitioners here, and so he is being flanked by some authorities, including the AI chief from the south, and so he's moving now to give thanks and appreciation to the nurses and midwives. The nurses. These are the people that are dressed in white. These are the people that are dressed in white. As as you say. The team is moving. The team is moving, and you see we are being interrupted by some securities. Places they said we should not go, but however, and then we will continue. The chanting there. And that's the midwives. They are chanting, welcoming the UK Foreign Secretary. They are welcoming here, welcome our visitors. And then this is a welcome event hospital. It's very, very clear that the mother works here, and he appreciates that very well. And that is even why his first place of visitation is the government hospital. We have been told that the foreign UK secretary has this maternal connection to here, and that is the difference between all other places he has ever visited in his life. Because and the Bo people in southern region, we've just seen where he has been crowned and given honorary paramount chieftaincy. They call him Kisi Konobombo. And in history, the Konobombo is the founder of Kakwa chiefdom, and that is why.
George Philip Jamawad there giving us the relevant history and detail to that highlight. Now, meanwhile, the British High Commission to Sierra Leone yesterday evening hosted a dinner in honor of the vesting foreign secretary, and during yesterday evening hosted a dinner in honor of the vesting Sierra Leone and the potentials that Sierra Leonean women have in building the country. Here are some major highlights from that dinner.
The reason I chose to visit Bo was because that's where my mother was born. So my mother was born in Bo as part of her young life. Went to Methodist Girls High School. Yes. So MJHS, and then with her sister and her good friend, these three brave women got on a boat and they came to the UK. And my mother arrived in Liverpool in December. I don't know if many of you have been to Liverpool. Anyone been to Liverpool? Yeah. Anyone been to Liverpool in December? So my sister, who'd come to the UK before, she said to my mum, "It's cold, so you might want to bring a coat because it gets quite cold." So my mum brought a nice short little Macintosh. This was swinging 60s. I've seen pictures of my mum. She was a fine-looking woman with a miniskirt and a little beehive and a little coat. And she came up upon deck in Liverpool in December and started crying because it was so cold, and she didn't stop crying for weeks. But she battled through the cold and she made a life for herself in the UK. She trained to be a nurse, she trained to be a midwife. She met my father, she had me, she got married in that order. And she made a life for herself. But because she was a midwife, not only did she make a life for herself, she brought life. She brought life to the world through delivering literally thousands of children herself. And when she went on to train other midwives, she trained a whole generation of midwives who worked in the National Health Service. She was an amazing, amazing woman. And I am so very proud of her. She passed away about 12 years ago. She never got to see me elected. but I think of her all the time in the work that I do, which is why I was so determined when we were launching our international women and girls strategy that I took the opportunity to do so in the place of her birth, in the country of her birth, my home, and it was a huge privilege to do so. But the point is, what I've seen here in Salone is work that we have supported in the UK government. We've helped, but you can only help when people are really determined to make things better themselves. So we've done a bit, but you've done a lot. And when I was at the hospital in Bow, I spoke to the midwives there, and they talked about how they've brought down the levels of child mortality, cut it in half, cut it in half again, and they're looking to bring that number down. And this audience is dominated by strong Syrian women. I can see I can see you, and I can see the future of this country. And the future of this country rests on your shoulders. The strong, powerful women here, you are the future of this country. And I know this country's been through all kinds of horrors and difficulties, and you would be forgiven. One would be forgiven for coming to Sierra Leone and expecting a country that was broken, a country that was lacking of energy and lacking of optimism because of all the difficulties that you've experienced over the last few decades. But what I've seen is the opposite. I've seen a country full of energy, full of enthusiasm, full of ideas, full of potential. And I have no doubt that despite the difficulties, despite the war, despite Ebola, despite COVID, despite all those things that could have broken a lesser country than this and could have broken a lesser people than you, that you still stand strong and you still stand tall and you are innovating and you are energizing and you are making this country better. And it is a privilege to be able to be a small contributor to what I believe to be your inevitable success. And as Lisa said, you cannot have a successful country without a country full of successful women. The maths just does not work. So, thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for being the foundation stone upon which this country is built. Thank you for everything you are doing. The female entrepreneurs, the designers, the business people, the political leaders. Thank you for everything you are doing. But
excuse me, on women's empowerment discussion, little is brought upon on bridging the gap in the disparities between what constitutes empowerment for able women and empowerment for women with limited abilities. Excuse me, as yesterday was International Women's Day, AYV's Phoebe Swill took a look at special needs for deaf women.
In the discussion for women's empowerment, there is an alarming and urgent need to form deliberate conversations that can lead to tangible actions that cater to the needs of women with special needs. In an interview, Safiatou narrates how she lost her only child during the COVID-19 pandemic due to communication gap at hospitals between doctors and nurses and people requiring sign language interpretation.
During that time, there was COVID-19 and the use of face mask was compulsory, but they were not aware of the deaf way of communicating, that deaf people rely on reading lips to understand, especially in the absence of a sign language interpreter, and there was no interpreter available. So I pleaded with the doctor and nurses to remove their face mask so I can read their lips. But they refused and instead laughed at me. I cried. They tried to calm me down when my daughter died there that day.
Safiatou attempted suicide after that incident by deliberately walking into a moving truck, but was saved by bystanders. She explains that going forward, she is going into advocacy in helping to prevent such instances for other women with hearing impairment.
To the government and NGOs, I want you to hear the voice of the deaf because we are always left behind. We are beautiful, experienced, and smart. I don't know why people are blind towards the struggles of deaf people, but it is important for all to join hands and help the deaf.
Women with sign language interpretation needs are left out on education about their rights, as laws are not interpreted to them, and electronics media institutions do not have sign language interpreters for their news broadcasts and programs. Safiatu calls on the government, the media, and other partners to help them. Phoebe Swiel, AYV News, Freetown.
Many thanks to Phoebe Swill for putting that story together. But don't forget, you're still watching Wake Up Sierra Leone on AYV television and sending your comments and questions to us on our Facebook page, AYV News, and be part of the conversation. In our first segment this morning, today is World Kidney Day, and the day is a global health awareness campaign focusing on the importance of the kidney and also reducing the frequency and impact of kidney diseases in it and its associated health problems. Worldwide, World Kidney Day is observed annually on the 9th of March, and this year's World Kidney Day has been themed Kidney Health for All, preparing for the unexpected, supporting the vulnerable. So this morning, to discuss this and more in the studio, we have Dr. Joshua Coker. He is the consultant physician and nephrologist and head dialysis unit, Komon-Tok Hospital. Good morning and welcome, Doctor.
Oh, thank you very much.
Doctor, let's start off. What part of the human body can we find the kidney, and how important is the kidney to humans functioning?
The kidneys are located in the abdomen, that is the parts of the body between the chest and the pelvic bone. So that's the abdomen. But within the abdomen, they are more towards the back rather than towards the front. And their main function, the kidney, is essential for excretion of excess water. It's also essential for removing toxic substances or poisonous substances from the blood. Another function, it also plays a role in the regulation of blood pressure. In addition, it also plays a role in the formation of blood. So that is why people with kidney disease, they tend to have hypertension, they tend to have anemia as well. And also, it also plays a role in vitamin D metabolism, strong calcium and phosphate, which are essential for the growth of bones and so on. So those are some of the functions of the kidneys.
In a country like Sierra Leone, and speaking of generally the health of citizens, are we a concerned country when it comes to the amount of kidney diseases you've seen at the Komon-Tok Hospital, or are we to say clearly citizens or countrymen do enough to ensure or understand that kidney is also a vital part and it should be taken care of?
Yes, based on the burden we see, about 12 months ago, we published an article on the burden of kidney admissions at Komon-Tok Hospital, and we have an approximate burden, an estimated burden of 2.7%, which by direct extrapolation, we say that about 300 to 400,000 Sierra Leoneans are at risk of kidney disease. And many of these patients, they present with symptoms like facial swelling, swelling of the limbs, which we call edema. They also present with reduction in their urine output. In addition, they also present with swelling of the face. And sometimes when they urinate, the urine makes like froth, which we call frothy urine. Those are some of the symptoms of kidney disease. And we also have other symptoms attributable to the retention of waste in the body, which include nausea, vomiting, hiccups, generalized your body is just scratching like that. So those are some of the symptoms. And then we won't say that in Sierra Leone we are not seeing enough cases. We are seeing enough cases. And a lot of these patients, Komon-Tok Hospital stands at the epicenter. So we receive these referrals all over the country, from Bo, from Kenema, from McKinney, from Kono, from Kabbalah, all over the country. People send patients, including PCMH, they all send patients to Komon-Tok Hospital. And Komon-Tok Hospital being the only public facility offering hemodialysis at this moment. So you can see the burden. And because of the availability of hemodialysis, we are receiving a lot of patients coming in. For example, in the last 6 months, we have conducted over 1,000 sessions of hemodialysis to needy Sierra Leoneans, and we have attended to about 135 patients, or let's say approximately 150 patients that needed hemodialysis. So I think the burden is increasing, and we have to come out of the hospital and do some awareness raising.
Okay, now with all of these alarming figures in terms of statistics, don't you think, well, sure, definitely prevention is better than cure. What can you say in terms of staying hydrated and saving or impacting our kidneys?
Okay, hydration and the kidneys, especially for times like this, February, March, April, which are considered to be the hottest, it is advisable to drink at least 3 liters of fluid. And it is also advisable to avoid the heat as much as possible. But sometimes it's just not possible. So it's good that we remain well hydrated, especially at this time that is very hot.
Okay, is it true that, all of these kidney problems are somehow linked to diabetes and the likes?
Yes, the common causes, based on research that we have done at Komon-Tok Hospital, the common causes, the most important one, or the most predominant one, is systemic hypertension, and next to it is diabetes mellitus, and next to it is infection-related kidney damage. So those are the 3 common causes. Other causes include HIV, HIV-associated kidney disease, and also obstruction. Okay. We have some fairly old people, obstruction from pelvis, or a cancer and from prostate disease, or a cancer somewhere in the lower abdomen can also give us kidney disease. So those are some of the common causes.
Dr. Coker, can kidney disease be related to the consumption of alcohol or harmful substances to the human body? Because, and I'll also like to know some of the myths behind the kidney diseases generally. Because in a country where we live, sometimes you see patients who stay at home and they will say, oh, listen, which gun and non fire? We're seeing foot swell, in belly swell. What are some of these myths around kidney diseases you have? And can one put him or herself at risk with what that person takes in, whether the consumption of alcohol or any other related substances?
Yes, there has not been any direct relationship between alcohol consumption and chronic kidney disease directly. There are indirect relationships. For example, alcohol can damage the liver, and then which can cause what we call hepatorenal syndrome. But directly, the major risk factors, one, ingestion of herbs. People take a lot of herbs and they come into the hospital with acute kidney injury. We call it acute damage to the kidney, which we just call acute kidney injury. So that is one. Also, some of the common drugs that people take all around, this issue of relief, anti this, anti that, all this pain relief all around, most of those drugs contain harmful substances to the kidney. They are able to damage the kidney, and we have cases, and even the recreational drugs that some people take. We have had people come in with Kush-related nephropathy, etc., etc. So it's very important, especially herbal intoxication and these painkillers. The people take them. Some people, young people, take it every day after work, especially manual workers. They take it every day after work, and after a while, it damages the kidney, and they will now require a treatment so expensive. So those are some of the risk in the environment.
You know, it's good you brought up such discussion. A few weeks back, I went to Lunge, and during my traveling, I had a lot of these, quack doctors selling drugs on the ferry, and a significant area that caught my attention was in the area of erectile dysfunction. These are some of the symptoms of kidney failure, and this excuse me, this guy was selling drugs and the likes in that direction. So what can you say in terms of kidney failure and erectile dysfunction?
Yes, erectile dysfunction is a well-known cause, or is a well-known symptom of uremia. What we call uremia, in the setting of kidney failure, there is accumulation of waste in the body. So once the waste accumulates, it can cause erectile dysfunction. So the syndrome wherein the waste accumulates is called uremia. So there is a relationship, but definitely we cannot say that all erectile dysfunction is associated with kidney disease. Psychological issues come into play, diabetes come into play, liver disease, other excessive alcoholism, and so on, excessive smoking, all those ones come into play in the causes of erectile dysfunction. But definitely, it is one of the symptoms of uremia.
And how can staying active be part of the solution in all of this? And yes, go on, please.
Yes, staying active, it's one of the lifestyle modification in the management of systemic hypertension, which is a major our surrounding. So staying active, moving around, increases your heart rate and helps in your blood diabetic. It will also improve the blood sugar control. So definitely it plays a role.
Doc, now let's speak to the care itself that is needed to be given to someone who might have a kidney related disease, and linking that with the COVID-19 or issue of pandemic or epidemic in general. How much needed is that care? If you look at the Salone system and how we were stretched health-wise when we had Ebola, when we had the COVID-19, and going forward, what more care is the special unit at the Komon-Tok Hospital? Is it overstretched when we have concerns of pandemic and epidemic?
Yes, thank you. That's a very good question. In line with the theme, preparing for the unexpected. That talks about disasters, pandemics like COVID-19, Ebola, as you mentioned, and wars, etc., etc. Whenever these events happen, there is increased number of patients who come down with acute kidney injury and will need renal replacement therapy. The best thing to do is to extend the service, because sometimes I feel sad about patients coming in from the provinces and don't have any place to stay. So sometimes they will tell you, doctor, I don't have a place to stay. So one of the things we can do is to extend the services to the provinces to target. The Ministry of Health is actually working on that and submitted a proposal, and actions are being taken towards that, getting a center somewhere in Bo and also in the north of the country to reduce the burden at Komon-Tok Hospital.
All right. Now, let's go a bit further in terms of, because mostly when you hear someone is having a kidney disease, the first thing you will hear after that is, I need a kidney replacement. Is that always the case?
No, there's a spectrum of kidney disease. For example, you can have infections, you can have kidney stones, but most of the ones we see at Komon-Tok Hospital, they have chronic kidney disease. So, and by the time they are coming at Komon-Tok Hospital, it's already advanced. So we call it end-stage kidney disease or end-stage renal disease. So those are the patients that need kidney replacement therapy, and one of which is dialysis. There are two types, hemodialysis and peritoneal dialysis. But what we have here is hemodialysis, which is like a machine. And then patients come in and is prepared for hemodialysis session. That is one. And also another kidney replacement therapy is called kidney transplantation. So that is not available in country. So we have to write a referral or a medical report for patients who can afford to pay for kidney transplantation.
I'm speaking on the theme, kidney health for all, preparing for the unexpected and supporting the vulnerable. Who are the most vulnerable when we talk of kidney-related diseases?
Yes, the vulnerable population we are talking about, children, women, especially pregnant women, people who are in far-reach communities, who will normally not check their blood pressure, except they are in a crisis, people in underprivileged setting, and yeah, those are some of the vulnerable populations.
Okay, as we are, commemorating the day, and let's take a turn to the vulnerable people here, as you've made mention of kids, especially because many a time you hear that there are donations being made to fly children out of the country and the likes, particularly to parents. What would you have to say to them since they are the first caregivers in this situation?
Many times, we have a few cases of chronic kidney or end-stage kidney disease in children. But many times, what happens to the children is an acute insult. Okay. So if your child is sick and you started, let's say, Lonart syrup or whatever syrup you started, after 24 hours, no improvement, please take that step and move to the hospital. Don't wait until there's convulsion. Don't wait until the child is no longer responding when you call. Then you rush to the hospital sweating. Don't wait for that. After 24 hours, you've given whatever you have at home. Please take the next step and move to the hospital. That will prevent a lot of acute kidney injury in children.
Okay, in the area where there are, of course, 2 kidneys per person, when somebody, let's say, donates to a particular person a kidney, and you have one, for example, now, what would be the case in terms of percentages of, moving on further in life and being a healthy individual? Is it advisable to do so?
To donate a kidney?
Yes, and you have one now.
Yes, the risk involved in kidney donation are very small. Okay. They are minimal. This is because before you are eligible to donate, you would have done a lot of tests to ascertain how well you are. And even before they donate, we do some tests to show which of your kidneys is contributing the most to your well-being, in terms of excretion. We'll do all those tests, and then before we take one of the kidneys as the donor kidney. Common questions for females, they will ask, will I retain my fertility? Yes, your fertility is retained. I think a long-term problem that has been noticed is that maybe 20, 30 years later, many of the donors had systemic hypertension. But overall, it is safe to be a donor.
Right.
If you are qualified.
And there are so many concerns on our Facebook page and quite interesting questions coming in. Eddie Grant is asking, what of hepatitis B? Can it affect the kidney too? And Kamala Charles is asking whether if sex enhancement can also cause kidney problem. And also he goes on further to ask, is it true that energy drinks are also a cause?
Okay. Starting with hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is a well-known cause of kidney disease. It's known to cause what we call membranous nephropathy. So it's a well-known cause. However, in our setting, it is difficult to say that we have kidney disease from hepatitis B because many of the people coming in also have other risk factors like hypertension, diabetes, or other infections to suggest that are risk factors for kidney disease. But definitely hepatitis B is a well-known cause of kidney disease. Going on to the use of energy drink. Energy drink directly, well, I'm not sure, but what I can say, they are caffeine drinks, and using them for a long period of time might have, it might affect the blood pressure, which in the long run might affect the kidney, but no direct correlation. So this energy drink is directly related to kidney disease, but using them over a long period might predispose to systemic hypertension, which is a well-known risk factor for kidney disease.
And also speaking on the myth, someone is saying it's only in Sierra Leone you see people selling drugs everywhere. You spoke just now of herbs and as we know,
Painkillers.
yes, it's a practice when you go out there. There are a lot of herbs being sold or peddled in the streets. In fact, Bangba is not even common anymore. You have different and they will tell you this is from Ghana, this is from Indonesia, this is from here. There's also a whole sector to dealing with that. But speaking on public awareness, how far do we need to go to ensure that you don't just take a medicine if it's not prescribed for, or if you don't, you haven't gone through a diagnosis to know that you have such condition? Do we need to strengthen sensitization as well in terms of talking about how we cut down on kidney diseases?
Yes. From what we wrote about a year ago, the article we published, we said that a strong or robust prevention program is the way to go. And with the drug peddlers all around the town, I've discussed with pharmacy board and other stakeholders involved, and their best answer is you will grab them, take them to the court, and the punishment is ridiculous because we are still here to review our laws regarding those things. So someone will be caught, go to court, and then at the end of the day, be asked to pay maybe 5 millions or something very ridiculous. So it has been a challenge even on their side. But I always say, take it a personal responsibility to keep yourself safe. Don't buy those drugs in the streets because many of them contain drugs and contents that may not be helpful to the kidney.
Okay, now since there are lapses in terms of checkups and the likes, what would you have to say when kidney failure reaches to a level where you just explained there are swollen ankles, swollen knees? What would you say? Because at that time they just expect doctors to perform magic. What would you say when you see early warning signs?
Yes, I have a couple of patients that are with kidney disease, and for about 2 years or 3 years now, they don't require dialysis. So some of the things we can do is modify our diet, what we eat. So our diet now contains a lot of salt. Going around town, when you tell the women, oh, don't put salt, they add more Maggi. So
in fact, that's what someone is saying. That too much salty food and also
Yes.
bad diet will cause kidney
Yes,
problems.
definitely. In the long run, it will, because the diet has changed. You walk through, you will see people selling slices of lunch of meat, and pieces of sardine, baked beans all over, all these thin food, which are very salty food. They are sold in sachets or in smaller slices. And so our diet has changed significantly. So we have early onset systemic hypertension in these children. And some of the things I've been thinking about is, why won't you just screen them at entry into secondary school or at entry into university, so that at least we begin to catch them early? But definitely we need to adjust our diet. Another thing I advise them, for those who are hypertensive, control the blood pressure. Take your drugs and monitor the blood pressure, because blood pressure is a well-known cause, and if it's not controlled, it will accelerate. For example, I've had patients, you advise them, take your drugs, they don't. Within a year or two, they now require dialysis. Others who took their drugs 3 years down the line, 4 years down the line, they still do not require. I agree they will still require dialysis some years later, but at least 2 years, 3 years down the line, they do not require hemodialysis.
Now, let's speak to the facility available. Many a time when we host or have medical practitioners there concerning different related disease, there's always a concern that there are not enough facility. Do we have the relevant facility to cater for the types of kidney diseases you've highlighted, or are we still in the phase where we just provide care, and when it goes beyond care, we do referral?
Yes, at some point, I will say the latter is true, what you just said. We are able to provide optimal care in the sense that we have facilities to do the basic labs that we want to do. And we also have facilities, a hemodialysis facility in the hospital, which is also a standardized care. But we do not have facilities for kidney transplantation, and we do not have facilities for certain tests that we want to do, and certain drugs that the patient will need are not available. However, we have had a few partners who have come on board to make sure a particular drug, which is called erythropoietin, is available at next to nothing, for even though our patients still complain that it's expensive, but definitely the drug would have costed between 600 to 800 millions. But these guys, these partners are making it available at 250 and 230 leons, so at least it's better. But prior, when I came earlier, it was expensive. Patients cannot even buy. And a drug like that is needed 2 times or 3 times a week. So we are still, I would say, kidney service is still at an elementary stage. We are not yet where we should be, but we are working hard to make sure the landscape changes.
Okay, I have a message here for you. This one says, I am a 33-year-old lady, and as of now, I have a kidney problem. Is it possible at this stage for me to conceive a baby?
It depends on the nature of the kidney problem. If it's a stone, you can conceive. It's possible. It depends on the nature. If it's chronic kidney disease, fertility reduces. If the patient is on dialysis, it's unusual for them to be pregnant, but of course, we have had cases of patients on dialysis and they got pregnant. So it depends on the nature of the kidney disease.
The other one says, is it easily detectable in men or women, Alia?
Kidney disease? Yes. We have things that you can screen for, which we'll be doing later in the day at Komon-Tok Hospital. You can screen for blood pressure. You can also test the urine test. So those two are very good screening tests. And also we can screen the blood glucose. So those 3 are very good screening tests that can be done. And then we can also do urea and creatinine, which are nitrogenous waste that accumulates, and it's done in most of the labs.
Okay.
So it's easy to screen if you want to screen.
You were speaking on plans for the day. What do you have in mind? What are you going to do?
Yes, today we'll be having screening at Komon-Tok Hospital starting at midday, and we'll be screening blood pressure, blood sugar, as well as urinalysis, and it's free. So if you can make time, you can come over and be screened. And also there'll be a short talk. During the screening, there'll be a short talk at some point, maybe around 1 to 1:30. We'll have a short talk on kidney disease. So those are the plans for the day.
And before we go over for our news summary quickly, earlier on you spoke of traditional practices that are affecting especially awareness. And you say also again, you also have patients coming from the provinces. And I stated that most times you see it's when the issue has gone beyond care. That's when you have people coming from the provinces to the center. Is that the case still? Are we still having people treating kidney-related diseases or not knowing that it's even a kidney-related disease, associating it with traditional practices like witch gun, like Fanke or Ali before coming to the hospital?
Well, what I can say, what is commonly misread, there's this thing they call Papa. They said, then Papa. Many of those patients come in and they had an infection, which resulted in an acute kidney injury. And then they are not able to urinate. Of course, they have not been eating for some days, so they are not able to go to the toilet. And then they said the Papa. So I can see that there's a textbook of kidney medicine, but we are yet to see a textbook of traditional medicine. And the communities there, they just come around and say, this is not a hospital sick. I mean, those statements are really, really misleading, and they've crashed or wrecked a lot of destinies. I think the best thing is to seek professional care and get that opinion available. So there's always this clash with traditional where I don't really understand what people call which gun. I think there are a lot of, that one will come with many diagnoses because we have had them say it's which gun, but we have made a diagnosis. So it's difficult to tell, but Papa is one thing that is commonly misdiagnosed. And then sometimes what they call Papa, we also call it intestinal obstruction. Some people can have intestinal obstruction and they're not able to go to the toilet, and then later on they develop acute kidney injury. So it's better for people to come to the hospital and be assessed properly.
All right, continue to stay with us, Dr. Kuka. It's now a minute past 9, and we'll now take a news summary from Ransford McLean, and we'll come back.
Glitch now to the first story in a news summary. President Julius Mabiu has reaffirmed our commitment that agriculture is the engine that stimulates sustainable economic growth to catch up with others. And President Bill was speaking during the open session plenary meeting in Doha, Qatar. Let's take a look.
To stimulate economic growth, agriculture can be the motherboard. And this is what we need to do, to catch up with the rest. And we can now introduce the transformation, take it to the next level, agri-processing, and also add value before we sell it to the world and in our own economies. So the indigenous methods, I think, have a place. And most people can afford to pay or prefer to go for what we call organic food. And organic foods are basically products of indigenous methods of production. Climate change has a direct impact on food production. Quite a lot is taking place in terms of erratic weather patterns that affect the agriculture sector. In the past couple of years, we've had a lot of flooding lately, and that is impacting how we can quickly produce enough food for our people.
And now to another story. Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, the Right Honorable James Cleverly, arrived in Sierra Leone yesterday and went straight to Bo City, southern part of the country, the hometown of his mother, where he was crowned as a honorary paramount chief. Let's take some highlights from the live coverage yesterday in Bo.
But this is the most amazing welcome. It's really made me feel properly as if I've come home. Thank you so much. Thank you.
It's actually a son of the soil comeback, and as we would expect, the paramount chiefs have given the most fantastic welcome. Plenty thank you to you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
You're always welcome for further visits.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much. You have to excuse me. I want to say a big hello and a thank you to the medical team here as well.
The team is moving.
And finally, global recognition and celebration of women's achievements on March 8th annually is a call to action for accelerating gender parity. This year's theme for the celebration of International Women's Day is digital all innovation and technology for gender equity. What's the status of women in Sierra Leone who are making a difference feels of persistent gender gap causing economic and social inequalities in the country. Some of these women spoke to AYV Month.
As a single parent with a son, I do not have anyone to support me. So I decided to start running a public transport. From this, I am able to pay my son's school fees. This tricycle has been my means of survival.
Me, I just go for tell and say let the car land no to man no more for do.
A woman can be a welder, mechanic, or a carpenter. It is not just a man's job, but some women shy away from such skills or jobs, not wanting to do hard labor. However, I'm always ready to take the challenge to do any kind of skilled job.
For some time now, we have been fighting, we have been voicing out our opinion in terms of and trying to ensure there are lots of women in different spaces, in decision making, leadership position, governance issues in their communities. Before now, it wasn't like that. To look for strategies as a country that will help support females for them to be retained and also achieve higher education.
But that's all in a news summary, and back to you, Zulatu Hamid and Bakari Matia in our main studio.
Many thanks, Ransford McLean. Please continue to stay with us as we continue our Wake Up Sierra Leone program, and don't forget to send your comments or questions to our AYV Facebook page. We still have with us Dr. Joshua Coker, as the medical practitioners are celebrating World Kidney Day. Doctor, there's a question for you here, and it says, with the exception of Komon-Tok Hospital, are there any private hospitals doing dialysis?
Yes, there are private facilities offering hemodialysis. There is a hemodialysis facility at number 1 Liverpool Street, we own Kidney Clinic, and there's another one at Choitkam Memorial Hospital. They have hemodialysis facilities, and plans are underway to reactivate the older one at number 8 Campbell Street, but it's not yet complete. So for now, we have 2 private and 1 public facility offering dialysis.
Now speaking on the planned activities for today, you spoke on screening and also sensitization, passing on the word. Is it only available at Komon Hospital, or are you also taking this drive across the country in the provinces?
For today, it's available at Komon Hospital, and we hope that in the future, we'll be able to take it across the country.
And how long will it, because you just stated that it will be free, how long will it last for? Are you expecting a certain number of people? Because when it's free, you know how it gets.
Yes, we are expecting to screen at least 100 people or up to 200 people today.
Okay. Many thanks, Doctor, and thank you for taking your time to talk to us on Wake Up Sierra Leone here on AYV.
Thank you.
Now we'll continue with the rest of our program. We'll be right back after the short break.
Every day, the world wakes up to you. Millions of people are getting ready for you. For shopping, travel expenses, utility bills, trade, and commerce. If we all have wishes, then what is your financial transaction wish?
I'd like to have a choice.
I'd like convenience.
I'd like to pay for goods and services on the go.
I'd like to pay utility bills on the go. Out of credit and data, buy some mobile top-up, still on my phone. Oops, light out. I'll buy some EPSA, still on my phone.
I like to make payment from my account to another account through my mobile phone.
As a chef of a company, I would like my staff to receive their salaries through bulk e-payment without the risk of transporting cash.
Wakeup Commercial Bank Simcoe does it all.
Wakeup Commercial Bank Simcoe. Think of it as
money when you're close to home and when you're away from home for unexpected expenses, and money for those times when cash fails.
If you can dream it, you can become it. If you can imagine it, you can achieve it.
Wakeup Commercial Bank Simcoe is all you need.
Sierra Leone decides when it breaks at the polling stations. We are your first and most reliable witnesses. We deliver a crisp and concise as usual.
With our modern broadcasting equipment,
Seamless coverage all around. From all angles and perspectives on TV, radio, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube.
We serve you with nothing but unadulterated information. For sure, we are your trusted election hub. We will give you a round-the-clock update and a precise look and picture of the election.
We will uncover and probe the business side of the polls.
Who's buying whose vote and why you should be concerned.
We will assemble all the experts shaping the conversation. Before, during, and after the elections,
we are ready. The tax ahead, we are more than ready.
We are your home of all things credible, factual, and all times balanced. AYV.
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 AYV International, a truly global media outlet. Our media platforms can be found across the world, including Africa, America, Asia, Europe, Caribbean, the Pacific, and more. Our media services include broadcasting, media production of documentaries, movies, and a wide range of audiovisual services, advertising and public relations, sporting and events coverage, photography, and a reliable media equipment rental unit, as well as media training. Contact us at our International AYV Media Centre, 18 Soho Square, London, United Kingdom, W1D 3QH. Telephone us on 074 967 45633. Or you can send us an email to ayv.international@ayvnews.com or ayv.international@gmail.com. You can also find us on our social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Welcome back. You are watching Wake Up Sierra Leone here on AYV Television. In our final segment, in 2017, Advocate and Center for Accountability and Rule of Law, CAL, received funding from OSIWA to implement the project titled Decriminalizing Poverty, Promoting Review and Reform of Petty Offences in Sierra Leone. Now, many believe that the criminalization of petty offences contributes to discrimination and marginalization by criminalizing poverty, homelessness, and unemployment, and impacts the poorest and most marginalized persons in our communities. In Sierra Leone, petty offenses include laws which are vague, which are disproportionate to the level of offense committed, which are often wrongly applied and violate human rights standards and the Constitution of Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone's petty offences account for a high proportion of cases entering the criminal justice system in the country. This morning, to talk on this, we have been joined in the studio by Juliet Mamawa Kaikai, who's the legal manager at Advocate, and Mary Magdalene, Advocate Officer at CAL. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on Wake Up Sierra Leone.
Good morning.
Let's start off with, in terms of statistics again, I'll pose this to both of you and you can start. In 2017, you did a report and it states that 718 cases were part of, cases tried at the High Court, and 33% of those 718 cases, were of petty offenses that wasted the time of the judiciary and, were unjust at the end of the day. What can you say in that direction in prolonged cases that do not need to be at the court?
Firstly, I must say petty offenses are minor offenses which were recognized by the African Commission on Humans and People's Rights, which is the body that oversees human rights in Africa. And so in 2017, they created a legal standard for African countries to decriminalize petty offenses, which are minor offenses. And usually what happens in those situations is that you're given a warning or a fine or a community community service, something of the sort. And in the event you're unable to pay the fine, you're likely to go to prison, but for a very short time. What happens in the Sierra Leonean context is many of our laws, which falls under the category of petty offenses, loitering, fraudulent conversion, and minor traffic offense. A lot of these laws, obviously, we adopted from our colonial masters, and then we see how it still sits within our criminal justice system and how it impacts the poor and vulnerable in our communities, people who are finding a way to obviously find a living. And a practical example I would give for loitering is our law says if you're found between the hours of 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. and you cannot give a good account of yourself, you would be found guilty of loitering. And it would not have been a problem if I am driving at 9 p.m. and then the police stops me to ask me. But no, it's highly likely that no one would ever be stopped in their cars to be asked, "What are you doing at night?" But mostly the people who are targeted are the poor and marginalized in society. And then when they come to the criminal justice system, the challenge that we have is they cannot even afford. The reason why they're working within those sectors is because they're finding a living. And we have an adage in Sierra Leone where we say people are working and defend the antomot. And so we find that it causes overcrowding in prison. It causes a lot of burden on the already burdened criminal justice system. And so obviously there is need for us to decriminalize a lot of these offenses which affect our system, our justice system.
Okay, so just to piggyback on what she has been saying, um, the fact that we have these petty offenses still in our justice system causes a burden, not just on the poor people, but mostly on the government. Because let's say you calculate the money that is spent taking care of inmates every day. And most of them in our analysis, we did a survey, as you rightly stated, in 2017, and we did another one in 2019.
Okay.
There was a guy in the maximum police correctional center. He has been there for 3 years for having an issue of a stolen goat. A goat. Like how does that relate to you being in prison for 3 years and you're being taken care of by the government? That's a burden in the first place. So it's not just about poor people, it's also a burden on the government. And then we also note that people are, as she was saying, marginalized. I mean, if I'm in my car driving along at 2 p.m. or 2 a.m., you definitely not stop me to say, "Oh, you are loitering." Even if I've been driving around the area, just circling around, you won't stop me because I'm in a car. But then if this person's standing, I mean, doing his or her own business, you then arrest the person for loitering. And most times in these cases, we noticed in our survey that the people who are mostly affected are women in the field of commercial sex. They are the ones that are mostly affected. They are the ones that get harassed by the police, and most of the times they tell them, "Come and bail yourself." And all of that, we do not think it's healthy. It's not like we're saying that even the commercial sex as a job is legal, but it's what they do. So I mean, and they're citizens. So if it's constant that they have to be oppressed in a way when they're about their own business, it causes a problem also. And with traffic offenses, these are the worst kind. You see a policeman stops a keke rider or keke driver for having a broken park light or something, and that person will spend a year in custody for a broken park light. So it was just all of those things that brought about the need to advocate for a reform on these laws.
Mama, let's speak to the reality on ground. Most of these laws, as you rightly stated, have been inherited before independence, and they are still functioning, sadly. So, um, um, what really is the review here? Is it expunging these laws or reducing the punishment or the levy on these laws? Because I see clearly there's also a bid to overturn the Sierra Leone loitering laws that activists claim is discriminatory. You've also rightly stated traffic laws. You've also stated petty theft, simple larceny, for example. But again, these judges or magistrates who are handling these matters have the discretion to also make sure they give the least sentences possible. Why are they over punishing, so to speak, petty theft or offenses? Why not go for the minimum?
Firstly, you need to look at what the provision of the law says, right? And then because the sentencing are discretionary, it's left to those who sit on it to decide. And So, because the laws are arbitrary, as I've said, it's discretionary. And so the problem begins with the police who are arresting, right? And of course, because you have a provision that says if you find someone in a particular area who cannot give a good account of themselves, then you can arrest. Do you always give a good account of yourself when you're in a certain place? That's the first question. And because it's targeted at certain groups of people, that makes it discriminatory. So if it's a law that is applied to everyone, and even when you look at why were loitering laws created, when our colonial masters were here, they wanted to have an environment where they could be in the section, and then people who are not within their class cannot come into that section. That's how the law for loitering came about. Why are we keeping it? And then if it goes to court, most of the time they're not, it doesn't get to a point where they're even sentenced. A lot of the time they take a long time during trial. And trial could take up to 2 years. So it means if you're not granted bail, you could be languishing in prison. And some of these matters never get to sentencing stages. And unfortunately, in our country, when, say, for example, you're not found guilty, you cannot come back and say, you've wasted my time. I have spent 2 years in prison. You just take yourself and count your stars that you're lucky, to find yourself out of prison. So really, I think it is not up to the judges, right? Because the judges are using the discretion. I think what we're trying to achieve here is to have these laws to get completely to either be decriminalized from our books, which is to take away the criminal penalty, or declassified, which is to say you could still have it, because there are times, say for example, within the traffic offenses, you would make the argument to say sometimes there's drivers, these bike riders or taxi drivers or keke riders can be quite lawless, right? They would act in a certain way, and then as a state, it is your responsibility to sort of manage, to hold balance, to create an enabling environment for everyone. And sometimes they tend to be, I need to be mindful, I'm a lawyer. They tend to act in certain ways that creates a problem, right? And so you need laws in place for that. You need laws that would prevent certain behaviors within the society. But then when you look at the laws, the existing laws that you have, are they addressing the issues that we have? So it means we need to go back to the drawing board, especially because Sierra Leone ratified the African Charter in 1983. So it means we're obligated to come back and review our laws. And we didn't just ratify the African Charter in 1983. As I said, the African Commission has also gone on to create principles. And so the Commission is calling on all member states to come back, look at the laws that falls on the minor offenses and see what you should do. They made guidelines. And our constitution as well states that, you have fundamental human rights. You have rights to freedom, you have right to your liberty, and most of these laws, sort of are inconsistent with our constitution, which is our supreme legal document.
And Mary, speaking again on whether what we really need is legal reform or looking at the legal instrument that we have, Mamawa has just stated we need both, because when you look at what we have currently, again, there's a huge problem. If you take an Okada rider, for example, and the amount of time that Okada rider will take through the justice legal system to get his or her verdict is going to take a long time, and he's going to be on remand, etc., etc. And of course, one offense will lead to another. Let's say, for example, if the bike man is being held for traffic offenses and then he revolts, they will say obstruction of justice and so on and so forth. So all these small offenses will then become a huge one. A huge one. Again, going back to the legal instruments we have, we've had them for 60 years plus now. How easy or hard will it be for us to repeal or replace them?
Okay, so I mean, if we've taken this long after the initial survey, we've taken this long to even have a draft bill on it. It explains to how difficult it is, because I feel like it is even more in Sierra Leone. It is so difficult for people to accept change or like embrace change. To say that this is not good for our societal setting anymore. It is archaic. It doesn't go in line with contemporary times. So we need to make a few adjustments here and there. We need to change this. We need to change that. It's difficult because of the mindset of the people and because of the resources that are available. And so we know that it's been tedious. It's been tedious. I mean, advocating for. Imagine advocating for in loitering, for the laws on loitering, and they will tell you now they can't support people away they work at it's almost o'clock, so it's so difficult because of the mindset of the people. And then if you talk about traffic offenses, there was a time we were dealing with a guy who didn't have his license at the time he was arrested by the police. So the law states that, the person is supposed to produce the license within 24 hours, right?
Up to 72 hours.
2 hours, yeah. You can produce your license. You can book the person and the person can produce the license. So that guy was in prison for like six months because he couldn't, you are holding the guy. So how can he go and produce the license when you're holding him? So it's been really, really tedious, especially also when it comes to debt-related offenses. Oh, that one is chaotic. We know that the simple microcredit issue is now becoming criminal, and it's also because we have to be honest when we speak to these things. The corruption is embedded, I would say. So, for example, these people that are working with microcredit business, they work closely with police. Yeah. So if a person fails to pay, they now talk to the police, and that person will be locked up. So if the person is locked up, how would the person be able to pay the money? It's not supposed to be criminal. You're supposed to go to the police station. You have an arrangement as to how you pay back the money. Because most of the times, these women, when they take these microcredit loans, it is for business purposes. So what if the goods are perishable and the person cannot make returns within the stipulated time, and you lock that person up for not paying the debt, but the person is locked up? How would the person be able to pay? So, it's been very difficult because the system, I wouldn't say going against the system, but trying to change the system that's been there for ages, it's very tedious, reforming the mindset of people. The advocacy really goes to the mind and then in actual practice,
Julia, you want to respond
yes,
to
I
that?
wanted to come in a bit. I think one of the things I would want the public to know is that minor offenses would affect anyone,
Yeah.
anyone and everyone. It might not directly be you, it might be your sister, it might be your brother, it might be anyone around you, it might be your house help, it might be your driver, right? Who will be driving your car. So to buttress on what she said about debt related offenses, we have fraudulent conversion and we have obtaining money by false pretenses. And both of these laws require you to have fraudulent intention. So if I come to you to say, please loan me some money, or you give me, say, your business, and then I convert that to mine, there is an intention to defraud you. What we see in practice, what we see happen in practice is people take loans. Say, for example, market women, many times they need to add to their capital. And then they take loan. And for many reasons, which we have seen, sometimes it has to go back to, providing for their families and then paying school fees and just holding the home together. And also in COVID, we saw that, a lot of people were not able to do the most out of their time. And unfortunately, you cannot pay this money within the stipulated time to repay the money. And you're brought to the police station, then you're arrested. In this situation, there was no fraudulent intention, not at any point. And sadly, so because people do not understand what the law says, many times you find that you're victims to these situations. Because if you understand what the law says, and then you're able to apply it and hold the system to account. So if I am arrested, and many times police have stopped me to ask me for my license, even when I have it, I'm like, unfortunately, I am not driving with my license, and they want to waste my time. Sometimes I take a picture of my license. I'm like, yes, you're not supposed to arrest me because I don't have my license, which is to say, you could ask me to produce my license. I can for many reasons. For people who have, maybe 2 or 3 cars, sometimes your license is in one and then you forget. The point is you're able to produce the license, right? And you don't have to spend time in prison because of these reasons. Sadly, so when it comes to the practicalities of these laws, because it is left to the police who are given wide powers, enormous discretion, we see how it unfairly targets marginalized communities.
Okay, so in all of this, how do you bring in the police in terms of all of these marginalities or these gaps so that they are aware as well in all of this process?
Quite honestly, we have been engaging.
them.
Okay.
And Mary said something about commercial sex workers and people not embracing the idea of commercial sex workers. When it comes to loitering laws, right, commercial sex workers may be targeted. Does not mean other people are not suffering as a result of that law being in existence, right? And we have been engaging because what we do is in our advocacy, we take the stories of those who are affected severely by the presence of these laws, take it to the stakeholders, the actors who are supposed to be, part of creating that reform, that change that we want to see. We have had multiple engagements with the police. And one of the activities under this project that we're implementing is for policymakers to have a one-on-one, to have a dialogue and interaction with those who are affected. We have taken policymakers to correctional centers so they see for themselves that, these laws, and I've also been asked in the past by other stakeholders to say, many times when you want to arrest, let's say, thugs in environment, right? You need a law to arrest them. I'm like, well, many times when you arrest armed robbers or thugs, you're not using loitering laws. That is not why you're arresting them. You're arresting them for something different that they're doing that goes against the law. So if we're trying to put systems in place, we have to understand what is it that we're doing, or what is it that we have maintained as a country that is inherently affecting our people, right? Because you're supposed to protect your people, you're supposed to be there for your people. And I don't see how minor offenses targeting poor people in this country is helping our country.
Okay. Now, quickly before my colleague comes in, there's some clarity we want you to do here. The issue of loud music, does it fall under petty offenses? Because that's one thing that's bothering a lot of people in Sierra Leone. Yes.
Okay, it bothers a lot of people, including me. I have been so angry. In fact, I was so pissed the other day. I didn't wake up early. I was just, I was basically ruffled from my sleep by this film. Yeah, so now so the film day, now so the film day. So I was so angry, but I think that is the public nuisance.
Yes, it
It's
could come
public
under public
nuisance.
nuisance. However, I think, you know, the efforts that we're making is targeted at three specific laws, which
Yeah.
we see is used predominantly in the context of Sierra Leone. However, I think an actual progress that we could make is have a comprehensive look at our laws. For other countries, you would see they're pushing for homelessness in countries like South Africa, where you would meet many people on the street and then they are taken and put in prison. You would see that their focus when it comes to petty offenses is homelessness. For other countries, is like insulting or disobeying elder people, whether your parents or whoever. And then for them, in that context, that is what is affecting people a lot. Public nuisance, of course, is a problem in Sierra Leone. Loud music, people being rude and speaking loudly can be a problem. But then we haven't seen in our experience, many people have been arrested for that. So our focus is targeted on loitering laws, fraudulent conversion, and minor traffic offenses.
It's clear, as you stated, the Larceny Act, the 1965 Public Order Act, and traffic laws should be taken into consideration whilst looking at the reform. Again, I want to ask how realistic this is. Say, for example, this advocacy, this campaign achieves reforming the loyalty laws or the fraudulent conversion laws. Will it succeed when it comes to traffic? You have people say, we need some of these laws because, again, these are three different ministries probably, or three different agencies working right around the clock, ensuring that some of these laws stay in place. How will you traverse all these bureaucracies? For example, if you want to remove certain traffic laws, you're going to have to deal with SLRSA, for example. SLRA, you're going to have to deal with the police, the traffic wing of the police. There are all these institutions now established, and they are now used to these laws, 60 years or so. How will just a reform help in the situation?
We didn't have the internet when I was born. When I grew up, I did not have the internet, but now everyone has the internet. Everyone have access to it. And so by matter of popularizing it, and I think when you engage with people, firstly, you need engagement. You need to have engagement with every actor. And yes, the challenge would be there. So when we take out these laws, what do? Our part of our advocacy or our campaign strategy is we're not leaving it like we need to take out these laws. We're also thinking when we take them out, there are existing problems. How do we come in to resolve those existing problems? We've also gone further to working on a drafts bill, right? Which with engagement from every other actor. Okay, so while you're working, say for the traffic warden, so while you're working, what has been your experience? We take into consideration that experience and see when we take away this law, what is the appropriate law that we need to put in place to address this problem? So I think it's about just putting what needs to be in place and not just leaving blanket laws, which is not serving. Because when we have this minor traffic offenses, when we have loitering laws, what are they really doing for us? The intention, as I said, the intention when they came about, when loitering laws came about, was to keep the protectorate, was to keep those who are not within the colonial masters, to keep them outside of them. So we still keep laws that do not benefit us while we're having them.
So,
And quickly, before I go over to me, there's a court case filed by advocate to the ECOWAS court for Sierra Leone to overturn the discriminatory law of loitering. The other time, someone was saying we are now quick to go to ECOWAS court. Has all remedies failed, and is that the last resort we are at now?
When it comes to regional courts, one of the benefits, one of the advantage that the ECOWAS court has, you don't have to exhaust national courts. You don't. You could decide that there is this case that, that is of public interest. And so I don't want to use our national courts that are available. I want to use the ECOWAS court. Nothing stops you. You have the option to go through national remedies, but nothing stops you from going to the ECOWAS court directly, going to the ECOWAS court. And besides, to add, right, as I've said earlier, Sierra Leone as a state has an obligation to international laws that we have ratified. And so what we are doing in this case, the advocacy that we're doing, we're just helping the states, because we understand that you have a lot of burden, you have a lot of things. And so because there is a lot going on, you may not necessarily have the time to look at other competing priorities. So that is where civil society organizations come in to say, okay, this is a priority. Where can we come in to hold things together? So us pushing for this sort of reform, Sierra Leone has signed to the African Charter, to the African Commission, which means that we have obligations. So when the African Commission sits to say, this is a problem within the African continent, and states are supposed to do this and this and this, they have the obligation to go through with those principles that have been set out.
All right, Mary, quickly before we bring in Ransford McLean for sport, has CAL exhausted its advocacy strategy when it comes to petty offenses?
Well, there can never be an exhaustion in in advocacy, really, because there are many mediums through which we do our advocacy. So no, we haven't. We're still working on it. We're still engaging. But the stage that we're in right now is basically engagements with top stakeholders, because we've done the groundwork, we've done the survey, we've spoken to people, we've had meetings with stakeholders and affected people. As she was saying, we've had to take policymakers to the correctional centers. We've done community mobilization, and not just in Freetown, because Freetown is not Sierra Leone. So we've had engagement in the provinces, in the district headquarter towns. So we've done all of that, and now at this present time, we are engaging the stakeholders, because as you rightly said, with the traffic offenses, any kind of reform in that particular domain is a lot of work. At this point, we have to engage the movers, I would say, the people who make the change, because we've done all the research. But in the interim, as we're trying to get a complete repeal, if we can, or we get some amendments done to the sanctions on the laws around minor traffic offenses. In the interim, we're engaging the SLRSA. They do this. I don't know. They do this. There's this handbook that they give to people who go in for the license, something like that. So we're now trying to tell them to get them to look at the laws and get sections that they will include into that handbook. So when they do the whole communication thing for a license, they communicate it. We've also noticed that there have been complaints. People do not really, they're not educated when they go. Some people just sit in their homes and get a license. Some people, they never really engage. SLRC never really engaged them. So we've had meetings with the directors, and they have committed themselves to, engaging bike riders, keke riders, mostly them, to educate them on some of the sections in the laws. So we're working on it. We've not exhausted our strategy.
All right, continue to stay with our ladies. Ransford McLean, our sport correspondent, is all set to give us the latest sport updates.
Yes, good morning, Bokai Master, and good morning to our guests and the viewers who've been following the show this morning. For our first story that has to do with boxing, Sierra Leone's lightweight champion Abubakar Kanu, known as Bakish, has qualified to the semi-final stage of the ongoing AFBC Zone 2 Men's and Women's Boxing Championship in Senegal. Kanu, who is also known as Bakish, represents Sierra Leone in the boxing competition, defeated his opponent, the veteran counterpart, that's a Mexican Montreal, through knockout in the second round of the bout. The 60 kg champion of Sierra Leone is set to face his Gambian counterpart, Mary Cole, in the semi-final today in the evening hours. Meanwhile, the 2022 Zone 2 silver medalist from Sierra Leone has expressed optimism that he is determined to return home with a gold medal for Sierra Leone. Congratulations to the young fighter after he traveled to Sierra Leone, alone, without support from the national authority, to support other discipline. And now to another story, former Sierra Leone national under-20 female coach Victoria Conte has called on her compatriots to take the front stage in any gathering and be part of national development. She noted that even though her condition hoped to return to active ball coaching, Coach Cox, as she's called, was speaking to Mohamed Zikoba, reflecting on the contribution of women in sports to mark this year's celebration of International Women's Day.
To be courageous. People should talk to them as people. Some of you people, the YV and others are talking to me, seeing you people. I'm very happy. That made me to be more confident of myself. One thing is that if I'm given the food now, I will go back to the food. That is what God destined me to do, and that is my job. Since I was going to primary school, I've been playing football. Steal my shoes after school, then go to the field to play. That time, the time of the late coach and may his soloists in peace, Fode Jange and others. So, and my brothers were playing for Republicans, Tijan Conte, Albert Conte. So I've been used to it. I'm from the football family. Oh, I'm so happy. This is my happiest moment because the last time I did the cooking for the team that came from Lunge and the other teams. I did the cooking. But today I'm here. But I want to say thank you for not being there in Bo because I think I'm Ramke did it in Bo. But I want to say thank you and God will bless you.
And as I close to the final story, new players of the national home-based team that was called up some week ago from head coach John Kista has expressed their optimism to make the final selection for the national senior team Leone Star for their double header against Sao Tome and Principe slated for this month in the AFCON qualifiers. These players say their hope is to represent Sierra Leone and to qualify the country to the Africa Cup of Nations. They made this comment during their team's training session at Murray Town playing field in Freetown.
This is my first time of being invited to the national team, and I'm very much determined to make it to the final list to represent this country in all international matches.
I'm so happy to be here for the first time to represent my country, and it's my first national call-up. Yeah, I'm looking forward for more of this, and I'll be very happy if I will be selected to represent my country.
It's my first call-up for the national team. I'm so happy, and I'm 100% determined to work for my space and to represent my country.
I feel very excited to be here, and I'm happy to be here. I'm determined to be part of the national team, and this is my first call-up in the national team. I'm looking forward to be part of it.
So happy for doing the national team call-up, and I'm a first tennis, whatever they call me. I'm ready for Give Me Best or qualify the team.
I've been dreaming of the call-up since I was young. I've been training hard for this call-up, so I'm very happy, and I learned a lot from the coach and I learned from the teammates.
We shall return to action for more other matches in the Premier League as we follow through for those. But yesterday, the book of condolence was signed from ex-players from late Leslie Bob Allen. You know, Bob Allen was one of the players for Sierra Leone that represents Sierra Leone in several qualifiers, in the AFCON qualifiers in the mid 90s to the late 90s. You know, Bob Allen was one of the finest players you can count off. May his soul rest in peace. Among that will be captured in the news. So that's all I have for sports. And back to you, Bokai Matia and Zuliato Hamid in the main studio.
Lance for Mackley, before you leave us, looking at the Africa Cup of Nations and matches we are to play, what has been the arrangement so far from your sport desk with regards to our home matches?
Either in Morocco, because as we speak, Sierra Leone does not have sanctioned pitch or venue to host a match according to CAF regulations. So play away from home in Morocco, a double header against South Tome and Principe. And after 2 matches, Sierra Leone has played in the qualifiers. We've only secured 1 point and hope to, seal the way through against the Minos. I would describe them, that's Sao Tome and Principe, slated for this month. We hope for the best for the team because John Kista has assembled 40 players, barrage of players, but who will make the final squad? But that's the pending question. Bokai Matia.
All right, thank you very much, Ransford McLean, for bringing us the details in the spot there.
You're looking forward to that, I know.
Oh yeah, I was actually hoping we would play our matches at the new Southern Arena, but I'm disappointed.
Anyway,
thank you very much, McLean.
Thank you, McLean. Because of the sake of time, we'll have to take 2 messages. The first one says, some traffic laws have to be decriminalized. The Ministry of Transport and Aviation was conducting a survey regarding the establishment of fast traffic courts. This is a step in the right direction. The last, yes, the last one says, how can a magistrate imprison someone who stole 2 rubber chairs? That is an affect to the person's family.
And Joby Bangali saying, a police officer stopped me some years ago asking for my driver's license. I pulled up and showed him my UK driving license. He first rejected it and said, that's Salone license I want. I then said to the officer, say Salone now one of the country with this license allowed. He then asked for the license again, and I then said to him, no sir, you don't need for hold me license. And you for get me license and being an Salone way in the house. He said he was going to arrest me. I asked him how. While asking him, I was driving off. To put in a nutshell, Salone police are just bullies. Wow. And also, someone is saying the police always use advantage over ordinary citizens because the people don't have a better understanding or clue about our constitution or the laws. And why? Because they know the high rate of literacy in the country. I think those are the messages in so far.
Matia, in terms of the messages, a lot of what has been said, especially the last one, is to advocacy on our part to know our rights. I think you can comment on that as well.
Yes. And most of these comments are around the traffic laws. As I asked Mary, we might succeed. It's highly likely we'll succeed with loitering, with the other offenses. But when you look at the movers and shakers of the traffic, I'll say the traffic industry. How soon are we going to succeed in those?
I think generally when it comes to laws, we have to do popularization of what our laws says. Yeah. When I think about the laws that we have that protect the rights of women, we have many laws. It's the implementation of these laws and people knowing the substance of the laws is what is the challenge. And I think it's everyone's responsibility, right? There's only so much as an organization that we could do, right? Yeah. We're doing what we can do, seeing that challenge, and from the work that we're doing, we were able to pick up that this is a challenge. And if we don't take steps to address it, it would create chaos. I mean, a lot of people have their experience when it comes to traffic offenses. I have mine. I remember once I was stopped. The traffic warden was in front of my car. I'm like, you're stopping me and you're in front of my car. Can you please excuse me, let me pass? and he said I was regulating my phone. I'm like, I wasn't regulating my phone. I was holding my phone. I was not regulating. So even words like that, regulating means you're playing with the
Your
phone.
phone, yeah.
And there is no law that says you should not hold your phone. I mean, it would be safer for you to put down your phone, but sometimes you're lost in something. Maybe your phone is there, and then the police stops you or traffic warden stops you. And so if you do not understand what regulations mean, you're basically going to waste your time. And then, they always have a way to sort of assert their power, and which obviously is unfair because you have other things to do. But I think it's our responsibility, it's you and I's responsibility to educate people as best as possible. And for me, my work does not end when I'm in the office or when I'm doing this work. Even within spaces where I know it is necessary to have this conversation, especially on laws that has to do with women. And I feel like maybe there are a few young ladies around or people my age or older women. I use that opportunity to tell you, to educate you, for us to have a conversation on what are the existing laws. And when it comes to the functionality of those laws, what is it in practical sense that it means for you as a woman, or, just even within these spaces? A lot of people don't understand what it even means, loitering laws. I have been at CID for another case where someone was arrested at 2 a.m. He was working. I think he was struggling for transport, and then he was arrested, and then he was in prison. And I'm like, why are you here? He said, I was arrested for loitering. This loitering thing. And people have rights to move about, right? If I want to go out at night, if I want to go to the restaurant, I have a right to. And when you leave laws like when you cannot give an account of yourself, you're like, what does that mean? And based on international standard, it requires states to have laws that are clear and precise. So these laws tend to be vague, and then the interpretation of them is a challenge. And so it left to the discretion of the ones who are, on the forefront.
So, Mama, it's not just about you giving an account of yourself. You have to give a sufficient account, as in that account has to appeal to the police. So if the account of yourself does not appeal to the police, you'll be arrested. So in general, as the messages were as indicative from the messages, the police has so much power, and their job is discretionary, but they're using that discretion to oppress people, basically, because you can't use your discretion the right way to say, okay, you are here, you've said that you're doing this and you're doing that, okay, you can go. But then no, they will now take you in. And then, as you were saying about educating ourselves, I mean, the problem we have in Sierra Leone is people do not think it's important to focus on other things that they think do not directly affect them. So the laws, people don't even have the time to know the law, know what it says. Even when you try to tell them, excuse now, we do it this morning. So they don't
find yourself in the situation
until you find yourself in the situation. So knowing our civic rights, our responsibilities, these are things that are important. This is what sets us apart from other citizens in other countries. They tend to want to know what the law says. How does it apply to me? So if you are in that situation and you know what the law says, you can basically know how to wiggle your way out of anything.
Okay. And to add before some policemen are looking at these and they go like, oh, you're bashing the police. I should say this to get the Sierra Leone that we want, because I think when people go to bed, I have interacted with a lot of Sierra Leoneans who feel aggrieved by the system and what we have. And so the change that we want to see takes, everyone's contribution, no matter how little. And everyone has power. And we have to be deliberate on how we distribute that power. And as, as police, we also sort of understand, right? And we are only telling the stories of what the people we interact with are saying. And we're very open, as I've said, we have had engagement with them. And it's also very important for them to understand that their actions are affecting, it goes to the core of people's existence, right? When you interact with a criminal justice system, it just does not affect affect you as an individual, it affects your family, it affects the state. And so it's very important when they're carrying out their duties, they keep that at the back of their minds to understand that this power that I have, how can I deliberately distribute it in a way that it's not negatively impacting Sierra Leone, the Sierra Leone that I hope to see? What can I do to contribute to that?
All right.
It's been an interesting conversation. Definitely we need to have the Sierra Leone police, as you rightly mentioned, for further discussion. We're not bashing at you at all. Well, this is where we end today's edition of Wake Up Sierra Leone. Our quote for today says, "To keep the body in good health is a duty. Otherwise, we shall not be able to keep our mind strong and clear." And it comes from Buddha, a wandering ascetic and religious teacher who lived in South Asia during the 6th and 5th century and founded Buddhism. Well, okay.
Of course, I would like to say thanks to our sponsor, Local Commercial Bank, for their support to this program. Continue to watch AYV throughout the day as we have other exciting programs coming up. Until we meet tomorrow with more exciting topics here on Wake Up Sierra Leone. We've been your host. I am Bokari Matia.
And I am Zulaya Tuhami. Bokari, this is your opportunity to wish these beautiful ladies happy International Women's Day. We're taking belated, exactly. We're taking the celebration to the definitely till the end of March.
So you are taking the game to me?
Yes.
I like that.